Eleanor Roosevelt's FBI file is one of the wonders of the Western world. It is one of the largest individual files that Hoover compiled, and it goes on for over 3,000 pages. She writes to Joe Lash, the letter's in her file. She visits with Joe Lash, the visit is in her file. Anything she says against segregation, against lynching, is in that file. They are following her everywhere.
Hoover's notes reveal his intense dislike of Eleanor, and the FBI would watch her for the rest of her life.
It reflected a conviction on the part of senior FBI officials that Mrs. Roosevelt's advocacy of racial equality was inimical to the national interest. He found her a threat to American society and values.
Fire!
Famous all-Negro U.S. 92nd Division, 1st Colored Troops in Europe.
Started this war, really started a mess. Now they took my man because they wanted the best.
For Eleanor, the war against fascist Germany and Japan made America's own failings, especially racism, even more intolerable. Her public support of racial equality enraged many Americans.
World War II exposed a great contradiction in American life. Here you were fighting Hitler, the world's premier ideologue of racism. And in your own country, if you were a black soldier in a uniform, you had to be very cautious about your life. They were still lynching African Americans, hanging them up, setting them on fire, shooting them like they were garbage and dogs.
During the war, thousands of people, black and white, moved to northern cities like Detroit to work in defense industries.
In Detroit, you had a lot of workers there that said, we just can't accept black people. We cannot accept black people in any kind of jobs that we had declared rigidly in our minds not to be black jobs.
By 1942, the atmosphere in Detroit was ugly. Blacks and whites clashed in housing projects and on street corners. Again and again, Eleanor called for tolerance, for equal housing and job opportunities for all Americans. And she wrote one memo after another, warning FDR about rising racial tensions. On June 20th, 1943, Eleanor's worst fears came true. Riots ripped through Detroit. White mobs roamed the streets, hauling blacks out of cars and beating them. African Americans responded in kind. The next morning, federal troops arrived and restored order. Nearly 1,000 people were injured. 25 blacks and 9 whites were dead. As America tried to understand what had happened, Southern newspapers found an easy scapegoat.
And of course, who did they blame? Eleanor Roosevelt, and they laid it on her. They accused her of being a communist. They accused her of everything.
I asked Mrs. Roosevelt one day, I said, why do you do so many things that make you so controversial? She said, I have access to the president, and if I don't use that access to do things that need to be done in this country and need to be done for people, I would be sorely remiss and irresponsible.
In the weeks following Detroit, Eleanor and civil rights leaders appealed to FDR to speak to the nation about the problem of race. But Roosevelt felt his hands were tied by powerful white Southerners in Congress, whose votes he needed for the war effort. He had a war to win, he said.
Our ultimate objectives in this war continue to be Berlin and Tokyo.